All bark and no bite. During one of the many panel discussions leading up to COP27, 25-year-old Ugandan climate activist Vanessa Nakate posed a simple question to ministers representing some of the world's richest countries.
Especially the ministers from the global north. Do you think that the people who are least responsible for the climate crisis and the ones who are suffering some of the worst impacts of this crisis deserve our help? Thumbs up. Higher up. So all of you believe that the people who are suffering right now deserve our help. So I'll ask a second question. Will your countries commit to putting money and finding loss and damage for those countries at COP27? Now that's where the problem is. My first question is like your statements. You're promising us. You're talking about what you're going to do. And my second question is about real action. Loss and damage is happening right now. We can't adapt to the loss of our cultures, the loss of our identities, the loss of our histories. We can't adapt to extinction or to starvation. We cannot adapt to loss and damage. So the first question equals to your statements, promises, pledges, sweet nothings. And the second question is about action. But everyone saw how the ministers were hesitant to say that their countries will commit to funding loss and damage at COP27 in Egypt.
Her question revealed just how unwilling some of the world's greatest contributors to climate change are to show any amount of accountability by putting their money where their mouth is in terms of funding mitigation of and the loss and damage from the devastating effects of a changing climate. Nakate's question comes ahead of COP27, the 2022 United Nations Climate Change Conference of the Parties, which will be hosted in Egypt from November 6th through the 18th. It has long been established that the countries which contribute the least to the anthropogenic factors that lead to climate change have suffered the most damage. Some small island nations, such as the Maldives and Kiribati, are literally disappearing due to rising sea levels, while others are suffering the ecological effects of bleached coral reefs. Some plant and animal species are facing extinction due to habitat loss and the deterioration of their ecosystems due to global warming. Apart from the infrastructural devastation on display, highlighted since 2017 and even before by a series of hurricanes that have broken historical records for intensity and size, economic impacts from climate change include damage to agricultural resources and the disruption of the travel and tourism industry. More subtle, non-economic damage is being done through the loss of cultural practices brought on by the degradation of family structures impacted by migration. The Paris Agreement, adopted to much fanfare in 2015, sought to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius in order to avoid the most catastrophic impacts of climate change. It was supposed to signal the serious intention of developed countries to provide technical assistance with addressing loss and damage. The bold promises emanating from that historic COP have, 7 years onwards, been walked back to a significant extent, with repeated failed attempts to construct a financial mechanism to address the thorny issue of who pays for the losses and damage caused by each natural disaster made more devastating by changing climate conditions. In fact, since the Paris Climate Accords, the agreed-upon annual target of $100 billion in climate financing has never been met. The highest amount of finance raised was just over $80 billion in 2021, but that sum was not garnered from the agreed contributors, but rather a mix of public and private sources. As the world prepares for the next COP, it remains to be seen whether rich nations, whose populations are themselves struggling with stagnating economies and the rise of politically insular right-wing movements, will muster up the will to commit funds to fight the climate problems their industrialization played a big part in causing.